Hello everyone, this is Jannah with What Your Library Looking Like. So this is my first post, and this is the day that I created this idea. Don't know where it's going to go from here. Wait, fix my hair. Okay, fluffed it. Okay, so this is the first day of my idea, What Your Library Looking Like, and I just finished sending text to all the people that I know like to read. And my idea is that each week we will talk about the different genres of books that are in our library. So for this week in What Your Library Looking Like, we're talking about novels. So I had my friends send me pictures of their favorite novels on their shelf, and I wanted to talk about my favorite novels on my bookshelf. So I don't have a lot. Oops, I just bumped the table. I don't have a lot of books, so this video won't be very long, but I wanted to talk about who wrote the book, what the book means to me, what I got from reading the book, when I was reading it, at what time in my life, and what I got from reading the book. My ultimate idea is for us to go live. I'll have to talk to my sister about that because she's done it before. This is my first time making a video. And maybe we can have like a virtual book club and talk about what our library is looking like. Okay, so let me grab my novels. All right, here. Some of these, one of them, two of them I'm reading right now. I usually read multiple books at one time. I've heard some people don't like to do that, but I really love to do that because I can pick and choose which book I want to read depending on the mood that I'm in. So right now I am reading Sula by Toni Morrison, and it is becoming, I grew up on Sula Court, which is crazy, and I read another one of her books, and each time I told someone that I read a Toni Morrison book, they told me that I needed to read Sula. So this book, I usually, FYI, whenever I'm reading a new book, I don't read the back of the book. I like to just be taken on a ride and just enjoy the thrill of hearing a story for the first time. And sometimes the back gives me too much information, so I like to just dive in without knowing anything about it. So this book, no one told me what it was about. So I'm assuming that I'm thinking after reading it that the themes in this book that she's exploring are the relationship women have with each other, the relationship women have with their mothers, generationally, the way that women show their love to their children, whether or not you like your children. And it's so good because I've had these discussions with so many people, and crazy things happen in this story, man. Like, I don't want to give it away for people if you have not read this, but this is a wild story. It's and I really love with reading Toni Morrison how she introduces you to each character. Forgive me if I ramble. It's my style of talking. Like I said, it's my first video to post on YouTube, but I really love how she introduces each character, how she and the way that each character is so layered, and how you can find something that you identify with in each character. She makes each character important, I should say, and gives them this spotlight. Like, you can have a whole chapter on introducing you to one thought that a character had, or one experience that a character had. I really have been enjoying this one, so this is one of my favorite ones. I'm not finished yet, so I'll give you more information on this later. Okay, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This lady right here, I know that both Toni Morrison and Octavia Butler are no longer present in this realm, but I don't like to use past tense to discuss people because everything is now, even past is now, future is now. So Octavia Butler is an incredible writer, and Toni Morrison, and I have been so inspired by this book. I'm writing a story with a diary like format. This book is so easy to read, and when I picked this up, I didn't know what it was about. If you want to know what it's about, I'm going to just challenge you to look it up yourself. I'm not going to tell you. But in this story, it's so applicable to what's happening right now with this pandemic. It will blow your mind. I read this story right when right before all of this happened, maybe some months or so before this happened. And I was like, I have to prepare myself for certain situations. This book made me think about what I believe in God, what I believe in, what I know about my creator, my relationship with my creator. It's made me feel like and understand the importance of writing down my beliefs, because the what the main character goes through in the story, I really identify with how the character wrote down her beliefs. But that's all I'll say in this story about the character in this story. But I really, this book really made me understand that I can be empowered by knowledge, and I can take action if I'm ever in a emergency situation. And man, I love how she does science fiction and just makes it so real for you. But this was written in what, the 90s or something. I don't never like when people look down at stuff when they're on a video, but I do need to see this. Yeah, it was written in I can't see it now because I don't have my glass. Oh, 93. It was written in 93. My alarm is going on. And she is, I'm telling you, it's applicable now. If you're looking for a book that will make you think, oh my goodness, the way the world is in this story is so close to the way the world is now and can end up going, especially when people have been so self-centered, thinking about themselves, and with corporate greed. Oh my gosh, this book is everything. I'm reading it currently to Halim. Halim is my mate. I like to just say people's names. I don't always like to say what the relationship is, but you'll hear me say his name a lot, and I know people will be like, who is Halim? She's talking about Halim like we know Halim. But Halim is my mate, and I call him my mate because I don't like to say husband. Okay, so, but I'm currently reading this to Halim, and I love reading books out loud. I usually read it out loud to myself, but it's a great thing to do. It makes you work on your reading voice, and it puts you into character. Like, it really immerses you into the story. And this is, I don't know where the cover is to it, but I actually like it without the paper cover. This is Blood and Gold by Anne Rice. She is the author of so many books, and she wrote books under different names, which is definitely what I want to do because I'm currently writing stories myself. But she is the writer of The Feast of All Saints. I saw that movie. I didn't know that it was a book, but Lord of mercy, that show was amazing. So I know the book is better. Interview with the Vampire, The Mummy, Queen of the Damned. And so a lot of her books are about vampires. And this one, oops, I'm currently reading this one now, so I don't know what it's about. It does say on the cover, Blood and Gold, the story of Marius, and Marius is a vampire. That's what I'm getting now. So I don't know what's going to happen with this one, but if you are familiar with her previous characters, she mentions them in this one. And this one was written, I'm not sure. She also wrote Merrick, and Merrick was the dope cover on that book. I didn't finish that. This was written, it says 2001. This was written in 2001, so it makes sense, like the story a little bit. It's like a vampire in modern times, but this don't seem like it's good. She writes in poetic language, so her writing is very different. I'm really enjoying how each author has their own signature writing style, and each one is so different. And reading different books from the same author, this is the first time I've gotten back into reading. I used to read a lot when I was in high school. I keep looking at myself. That's such a bad habit. I should look at the camera so you know I'm looking at you, you know. Okay, so but this book, I grabbed it because I know that I don't know many books from her, and I want to get to know her as a writer more. So this is my first book, and I really am appreciating how simply she describes the setting. She doesn't give you too many words so that your mind can just bounce around with different interpretations of the way the room will look. She'll describe the way the room feels as opposed to the way it looks. Like they would this one man was taking a bath, and I could just imagine the way it felt, and I could picture the candles, but I didn't have a clear idea of what the room looked like. But I really appreciated how she just let me decide, and I'm getting inspiration from all these authors with that, because it's helping me not be too wordy when I'm describing settings. And boom, The Hunger Games. This is actually the first book that I read and saw the movie. I loves me some Harry Potter, loves it, but I did not start reading Harry Potter until many years after having watched the movies 1,000 times each. But The Hunger Games, so well written, so simple, and the world that she created here, and how I keep thinking of the word, the juxtaposition of this world beside ours, like how similar these worlds are. And I read all of them, but The Hunger Games, the first one, I always like to return to the first of sequence of what trilogies, and what is it, what do they call it, the ones that have more than one, I don't know what to call it, but Parable of the Sower is one of those that will have a sequel. Yeah, and that's called, I think, Parables of the Talents, or something with talents, but I need to find that. But this book, I was given this book by one of my friends in grad school, and I was so depressed in grad school, so sad and lonely. I didn't know myself, and it was just such a sad time that her giving me this book really helped me get back into reading. After reading this book, I started reading more, and to have seen the movie with it too, it increased the experience for me, because things that I pictured in my head, to then see it on the screen, to see someone else's interpretation of it. Like, there was a word in this, the cornucopia, and I didn't know what a cornucopia was when I was reading this, so I didn't know what in the world to make that look like in my mind. But at that time, I refused to look up the word. So I instead wanted to just let my mind do its own thing. But this book is so nicely written, and to think about how a book can inspire a movie, I really like to read this, because I like to imagine that maybe my work would end up being a movie. And I think about the important things that they kept in the movie and things that they didn't, little details that they didn't. They were really true to this. It wasn't many things that they left out. But I really identified with the characters, and how she just dared to create a new world, and it's a world that is generations from ours, but it's related to ours, like it comes from ours. But I really appreciated the connections that I saw. Boom. So I'm reading that again right now. And then this one is not a novel, however, I refer to it often, a thesaurus. I love a thesaurus, and it often helps me with words that are in books that I do not know. It helped me read this book, The Bluest Eye, when I was in high school. Oh, my computer needs to be charged, so I'm gonna hurry up through these last. I only have 2 more. Okay, so this one is, I read this in high school, and I found this copy at a thrift store while I was searching for Sula, because after having read one of her books, I wanted all of them, and I love me some thrift stores. And I think that if I find something at a thrift store, it's way more meant to be than if I find it at a store brand new. I've really been searching for Toni Morrison books at the thrift store, then I found this one. Now, when reading this, it is a difficult read for me because it is a depressing story. However, the concepts that she explores in her books, my gosh, she just makes you think about things that you didn't even think about, and it'll understand why people act the way they do in our culture, and people from people of African descent in this land of America, which we now call America. I'll do another video about all of that. But this book, I love the way it's written. Again, with the characters, the main character's name Piola. Yeah, Pecola. And she I know what this one is about because I read it in high school. She prays for blue eyes, but she's a girl of African descent with dark skin, and she doesn't have blue eyes. But it really explores the concept of beauty within the African community, and the way it's shaped by the way people respond to you. And it really made me think about how powerful a teacher's response to you can be. And being a teacher myself, it made me think about being very conscious of the words that I choose to use with these young kids, because we are shaping what they think of themselves by our reaction to them and the way we treat other people who don't look like them and who look like them. It's so interesting. But I haven't finished this one. I'm not currently reading it. I will come back to it because I'm not going to leave an unfinished book on my shelf. But this one is definitely well written. I'm going to pause this to charge my... Okay, back in bill now. I had to charge my laptop. Okay, so this one is the next one. This is the second book that I read. There's also a movie. And this book, I saw the movie first when I was a child. I used to watch it all the time. And every time I saw it, I was confused, utterly confused about what in the world was going on in this story. But once I read the book, it added Toni Morrison right up there to the top of my list of favorite authors. This book, it gives me chills talking about this book. When it is, if you don't know what it's about, I won't ruin it for you, but it really delves into concepts of how mothers care for their children in slavery, and how you can understand why mothers did certain things that they did. And it was and it also helped me think about what it was like for African men being in bondage with other African men, crazy things they were doing to them. It's one scene in here that just made me whew, when they talk about well, I guess I will have to ruin it if you haven't, because by now you should know what it's about. The scene that she wrote with so spoiler alert, the scene that she wrote with the most gruesome scene in here, with what the mother did to save her child from slavery, I'll say that. It was so chilling. I read it at least 3 times, just that line. And she described the way that Toni Morrison describes a scene in one sentence. Poetry and artistry, because she will paint an entire scene where you can taste, smell, hear, feel, see every element of that scene in one sentence. And it will be a short sentence. You will start that sentence not knowing where it's going to end, and by the time you end that sentence, you crying because of the imagery she gave you. This book was it for me. This one was it for me for Toni Morrison. And the first one that I read from Octavia Butler, Kindred, I still talk about that opening scene. I listened to that book. I'm going off on a tangent, but I listened to that book, Kindred, on audio, and I didn't know what it was about. And man, from that first scene, I still talk about it. If you haven't read Kindred, how she pulls you in from the beginning, I'd be like talking to her name saying, can you imagine if that happened to us? But anyway, Beloved is, I will read this book over and over and over. I swiped this from my parents' house, and it is now on my shelf. It is now mine, and it just shows you how you have to read the book. If you see a movie, you do have to read the book. Number one, to appreciate the craftsmanship and creativity that led to that movie, you just have to pay homage to the book and read it just on principle. But secondly, you will understand the story in a deeper way, a much deeper way. I started reading parts of this to Helene too, and how she changes the voice of the from chapter to chapter. Like at one point, she did like 3 chapters back to back where it was from each character's perspective of one event, but it was done in that character's voice, and the language that she used, you knew that it reflected the way that character thought and the way that character spoke. You could see that character's history and why they use those words. She just makes me think so much about being a writer. I just love it. Okay, and the last book will be my book. This is the first book that I read that made me feel like I was grown. And this is Fly Girl. And guess where I found this copy? At the thrift store. And it made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is for me. I read this book. This was the first book that had anything grown in it. It's the first book and it's about a girl who is finding herself, like who's growing up, and it's starting with as an adult. As I'm reading it again, and I didn't read this until like what, middle school or so. I don't know, but this is the first book that I read written by a man. I think I read another one of his books, but I can't think of it right now. It was written in '93, and then copywritten in '93, and then again in '96. But this was the first book I read by a man, and I just loved the cover. For some reason, I feel like the cover used to be orange, but when I had the book, but her hair, who will tell her she not fly? Like, look at her. She got gold on her head, on her ears, and on her neck. Like, how she not fly? And her eyes are hazel. And I like the simplicity of the drawing of the cover art. Because I draw too, and I've tried with different styles and stuff, and I liked how this was just so simple. But it's not about the, like, usually when I was younger, the cover would determine what picture I had in my mind of how the character looked. But so I liked that this one was cartoon because it didn't get in the way. Sometimes I'll get caught up in holding an image in my mind of the way the character looks, so sometimes during it I would have to turn to the cover to remind myself of what the character looked like. But when there's nothing getting in the way, I can really just imagine it myself and maybe change her face throughout if I want to. But okay, but this book was really interesting for me as a child when I first read it, because the main character's parents go through a divorce in the beginning, and she just doesn't understand, or she just sees it from the perspective of now daddy's not living with us. And it made me really think about the impact that can have on how it changes the dynamics of the child's relationship with the parent based on who's there and who's not there anymore, and how her relationship with her mother changes, and how her relationship with friends change, and the way that she explores it. It has sex in it too, but that it wasn't a whole lot. This was the first book that I ever read that had sex in it, so I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm grown. But it wasn't in a crude and crass way. It was really in a way like a young girl trying to understand what it is and the feelings that you feel after. But it was really a really nice read, and now I haven't finished reading it again for this I don't know, as an adult, because I don't know how many times I read this as a child. I probably read it at least 3 because I like to reread. But I'm appreciating the way that he wrote about arguments in this book. Like in the very beginning of the book, when the couple is going through their issues, and he writes about one argument, and it is the dumbest argument. It is not even about anything, and you know how you can be in a relationship and it could just be a bad mood that you're in, or the other person's in a bad mood, and it may not be an actual issue that you're fighting about, as opposed to you just reacting to that person's mood. And it was nice that he captured that aspect of relationships. But this was really special because I'm fly. I know I'm a fly girl, and I felt fly all my life. So I like this book, and I want to see how it makes me feel fly as a woman. So I'm reading it again. I haven't finished reading it again, but those are the books that are in my library, and that's what my library looking like. Those are the novels. So what's your library looking like? I would love to hear the books that are on your shelf. And when I get help from my sister, maybe I can do a live session and we can actually talk about the books that are on our shelves, the novels for this series or episode. I don't know, but yes. Oh, and I forgot to say the date. Today's date is June 1st, 2020. So that I can mark the day that this began, because I feel like what if it goes viral and I have all these people following me, and right now I don't have anybody following me. I'm not on Facebook or Instagram or none of those things, so I have to record this. But I hope that maybe we could do a live and you could tell me what's on your shelf. And I'll try to keep these short, like this kind of long, 24 minutes. Yikes! I'll try to keep it like 15 minutes for my videos, so I'm not rapping. But thank you for watching the first episode of What Your Library Looking Like. And next week we're going to be talking about educational literature in our library. So you'll be pulling down your favorite and most influential educational literature on your shelf. All right. Bye, everybody.